Welcome to WWDMD, a podcast that is all about peeling back the curtain on what clinicians really think and feel as they work with others. My guests, clinicians, who are also sometimes clients themselves, risk their vulnerability as they publicly share their emotional reactions to their clients, disclose their challenges in doing the work, and reveal their personal backgrounds. I'm Dr. Meyers. I'm a psychotherapist in New York City with 30 years of practice experience, specializing in anxiety and depressive disorders, as well as sibling relationships and family systems. I'm also a professor of social work at Malloy University on Long Island. I see this as a journey of self-reflection for not only our guests, but you, because with each episode, I'm hopeful that you will learn something new about yourself. Please note that any discussion of case details have been modified to protect the privacy of our clients.
What would Dr. Meyers do?
Hey everyone. I wanted to share what I've learned from being a caregiver to a parent. There are many of us in the sandwich generation balancing responsibilities of caregiving for children and aging parents. It's incredibly challenging and daunting. So many emotions, a lot of time demands, and so little time and energy. Even if there's no children involved, it remains that caregiving is an enormous task. There's so much to contend with for both the aging parent and the caregiver. I'm going to start with the stress on the caregiver. Whether you're working full time or not, the emotional aspect of seeing your parent physically and or emotionally decline is a monumental loss. This is the person who took care of you, who had all the answers, who was a guiding force, who supported you into your adult life, who cared about all that happened to you. Accepting that they aren't who they once were, physically, cognitively, or both, often leads to feelings of anger or frustration or resentment and even depression. And all of these feelings often converge in reprimanding the parent. How could they forget what you told them? Why do I have to keep repeating the same thing over and over? Why doesn't my parent ever ask about what's going on with me anymore? Why is every phone call or visit laden with, I need you to do this or I need you to do that? Why isn't my sibling or siblings partaking in the caregiving? It's really hard to let go of the image that once was, the one that is no longer there, the loss of a parent while they're still alive. Once there's some physical distance, like after a visit, the guilt sets in. How could I have treated them like that? It's okay, I'm telling you. It's human and it's normative and it's really, really hard. The goal, of course, is to have more empathy, but the reality of the burden and the loss often overwhelms our ability to be empathic. I know when my mother developed dementia and could not remember something I said, she would say, "You never told me that." Upon reflection, right, once you're able to kind of look back at this, I would have hoped to have offered compassion and empathy, resulting in a response of simply, okay, indicating, yes, I never told her that. But most of us respond with, I did, don't you remember? But this is of no help, as it only makes the parent aware of their deficiency and leaves them feeling less than or even berated. Now, if there's been a historically conflictual relationship with the aging parent, it can be even more stressful and confusing. For example, there was a long period where my mother seemed to be getting more critical and her memory was declining. And I'm only able to consider this in retrospect because as it was happening, it simply felt like an extension of her original self. In other words, she was often critical and would blame others for her misgivings to the point where I once said, if myself and my father and my brother all had the same perception of her, at what point does she look at herself and say, maybe there's something that she needs to change? Not that there weren't wonderful things about my mother, may she rest in peace. So when the cognitive deficit really began to show itself, it became less clear as to having an official diagnosis, or was it a more entrenched aspect of her typical behavior that sometimes comes with aging. For me, my mother would often say something hurtful and then deny she said it, leading me to question my own perception of reality. So for me, this occurrence of "you never told me that" was a trigger, and I continued to defend myself rather than be the emotional support and picture of patience she so needed. Intellectually, I understand that losing one's memory must be awful. I contend with it now, maybe a little too often, where I forget words on a regular basis, or I forget what I was going to say mid sentence. But really, losing one's mind is debilitating. And being in the stage where you know it's happening, awful. So now I'll talk more about being the one with dementia. Now, my father has early signs of it at age 91. He's made it a long time, doing relatively well. And now he's quite aware of its progression. Other people will meet him and wonder in a really positive way at how cognitively sound he is. He can talk about the news, he can hold conversations, but behind closed doors, it's a different story. He can't follow instruction, he can't hold more than one thought at a time, he can't accept what is happening, and this shows itself in his outbursts, his lashing out, and blaming others for his limitations. Like my mother, this is part of who he always was. Now, he's a kind, gentle, generous man, but when it comes to conflict, he could never take ownership. So when he displaces his frustration onto me that I'm not doing this or that correctly, whether it's facing him when I speak, moving too fast onto the next subject, loading him with information, it still triggers me when he gets angry. Again, it's my fault. But now I'm much more aware of what is happening. And that allows me to be a little more patient, a little more kind, and a lot more desirous of making him comfortable by meeting his needs. Aging is hard. Losing your cognitive functioning even harder. The least I can do is work on the emotions that come up for me so that I can be better for him and in turn myself and get support. I need to get support. I can rant to my friends. I can discuss with my therapist. I can find a community of caregivers. I can laugh at my mistakes. I can laugh at my parents' behavior and find gratitude in the time I have with him. This podcast is about moving through our work with all of our transferences, right? And I'm talking about those of us who are in the field of the helping professions. But I would say this: our parents are powerful shaping forces. When we haven't done the work in therapy to understand their influences and process that and see the connections between their perceptions of us and relatedness, to us, and how that impacts so many aspects of our lives, we're going to carry that with us. And it affects not only our relationships back to our parent, but with many others we encounter. So work through the upset, the rejection, the anger, the pain. If you're not in this phase of life yet, do it now. I saw a TED talk about the right time to work on a marriage. It's beforehand. And that's so true because we bring all of our stuff into our relationships, into our friendships, into our relationships to our mentors, our bosses, our partners. And the more we are aware of our stuff, the more we can manage it and have more satisfying relationships. Well, the same goes for our aging parents. They did the best they could, and you may be their only source of support now. Generally, they deserve it, warts and all. Work on your stuff now. We do the best we can, both ourselves and our parents. So here's the empathy for the parent. Can you imagine what it's like to regress to childhood, even toddlerhood, to need assistance for common everyday practices, to not remember what you don't remember, to not be able to piece together parts of your life, how everyday tasks become monumental chores Getting dressed takes 5 times as long. Every move poses a risk of falling. Help is needed to wash one's hair because lifting one's arms is too heavy. To need your children to care for you when you're the one supposed to be able to provide care to your children, even your adult children. To face the humiliation of pure physical and emotional nakedness, to be utterly dependent, it's a regression of all regressions. This is a cruel life transition. It's extremely difficult to reconcile both the physical needs and demand and the emotional aspects for all involved. Be kind to yourself and be kind to your parents. They did and are doing the best they can. Thanks for listening. I really do appreciate it. If you like what you heard, please consider leaving a rating and review on your podcast platform. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss my next episode. If you're struggling with clients, I'm happy to consult or provide supervision. Consultations are also available for any person listening. If you're struggling with sibling abuse, you may want to join my sibling abuse workshops. I'm open to feedback on topics you'd like to hear or questions, so feel free to email me at drmeyerspod@gmail.com. You may be interested as well in checking out my blogs on my website at amymyersphd.org.
I've got some problems, yeah, I've got some questions. I need some help, point me in any direction. Clinical guidance is what I need to help me become who I'm meant to be. I've been searching for a teacher, another point of view. And I've been asking myself, what would Dr. Meyers do?